welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a review on the novel Feed by M.T. Anderson. It takes place years and years and years from now, to the point where people are able to go travel to the moon. So it's very futuristic, and everybody has this thing called the feed implanted into their heads, and it's basically the internet. Part of the reason why it's called the feed is because it is a consumer marketing tactic. It can do everything from looking up information to ordering stuff online. The more that they consume, or the more that they look at stuff, the more they get advertisements and commercials into their feed. They can also look at news stuff and things like that, but it's mostly geared towards consumerism and trying to make these people buy more and more and more. The feed is so wired into their system that it controls a lot of their own motor skills. They're pretty much installed into their brains at a very, very young age, and the story takes place between two main characters. There is a love relationship in the story between a boy named Titus and a girl named Violet, and it's also about the downfall kind of humanity, and how pretty much the internet and technology is taking over all our lives, and how eventually, if we don't take steps into bettering ourselves and not being so technology forward and realizing the world around us and how it's getting destroyed, we will eventually lose our humanity and the planet that we live on. It's through the mindset of a bunch of teenagers. So the dialogue, it's very slang written, but also sophisticated in a sense. And when I read it, I was like, I'm getting very early 2000 vibes. It just made me feel like a teenager again, and like a young kid, like just the way we all used to talk back then. Cool to see that dialogue within a futuristic setting. This is a YA book, which I feel like from the cover, I never would have guessed it was a YA book. It's just really different. I would highly recommend anybody read this novel, and I would probably I'm gonna give it a 5-star review on Goodreads, because this was amazing. I loved every little bit of it, and I want to reread it again. Titus is more of the laid-back, chilled kind of person. He's very oblivious to the world. He's a consumer within the novel. He's really into the feed and all of that. And Violet, she's very eco-friendly, and she doesn't like the way that humanity is going down this specific route, and she's very like political, and she's really on a lot of topics, where as everybody else is really blind to everything. It also kind of is almost like a drug for them, so whenever they get a malfunction or like look up malfunctions for feed, they end up getting high off of it. They talk about that every now and then within the novel as well. The imagery, there are scenes where they talk about lesions and grotesque imagery of, in this world, everything's pretty much dying. The point where it's affecting every person, and their body is starting to disintegrate. They're losing their hair, they're losing parts of their skin. Even though they are pretty much disintegrating, they kind of look at it as a fashion statement. So for them, having a lesion is cool. Like, oh my god, you have all these cool bits and pieces of your body falling off, and you just have all these scars on your face, like, sense, which is really crazy to think that these horrible things are happening in this novel, but it's marketed as a positive. Like, look at all this bad stuff that's happening, and let's make it into a positive. And that kind of just reminded me of, like, in general, I do feel like in our society today, there are a lot of things that are marketed to us where it seems like, oh, this is really great for your skin, or this is really great for your body, but in reality it's not, and it's a bad thing that you're not supposed to use or eat or have around you, and then it has side effects later down the line, but yet it's being marketed as a positive thing. There are sections where it's kind of bizarre, but it's the news feed. It'll have like dialogues of the news feed, and pretty much it just sounds like a bunch of commercials for the most part. It was a little bit annoying to read that every now and then, but it does immerse you a little bit more into the actual story. They just go through a bunch of like relationship issues because their personalities are so different from one another. Titus is more laid back, and Violet's more kind of like strict and very political and wanting to make a difference in the world. It's interesting to see the two bounce each other off of each other. Love this novel. Oh my god, it was a real refresher to read the way Titus talks about things. Like, there are a couple moments where they say da 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 da, and I'm just like, it was a little off-putting to read that stuff in the beginning, because I was just like, it's such a sophisticated book, but then like the dialogue between the characters is just kind of like childish, which I mean was the point of it, but I thought it was so cool to have that those two different things contrasting against one another. One moment in particular that really stood out to me was at the end, where Titus is just talking about how his mom, like her bottom half of her mouth to like her lip, yeah, pretty much the bottom half of her mouth was just like completely gone, and like you could just see her teeth, and I was just like, oh my god, that's an eye-opener. Violet and Titus are so different from one another. I kind of don't like either of them on their own. When they're together, they're fine. It's just because they're so polar opposites that I feel like I do agree with both sides to a certain extent, but not fully, because they're so extreme on both sides. But when they're together, they're perfectly fine. Feed interruptions, like I understood why they were there. It was a little bit bizarre though, because I'm just like, oh, this is kind of weird. The visual imagery was just really cool. Towards the end, it really helped a lot to like immerse like the world that they were living in. To be honest, I didn't think the story was gonna go the way it did. I thought it was gonna be about, oh, like how, because they were all at there was a scene about how they were all at like a concert, and this one person pretty much like messed with their feed, and then they all went into a hospital. It was Titus, Violet, and Titus's friends who all got affected by it. And when they went to the hospital, it seemed really cheery and cool and fun and whatever. And I thought that the whole entire story was going to be about how they were going to catch this guy, and not about how Violet slowly ends up pretty much becoming paralyzed by the end of the novel. I didn't think I was going to go that route. I thought it was going to be completely different. Ending was like I feel like the most significant part of the whole entire novel. Titus pretty much, he doesn't lose interest in her, but the fact that like he kind of just like stops listening to her even though she's right about everything. I found it also really disheartening that her feed system was messed up to begin with. She didn't believe in buying, you know, all these products and like doing and going along with what everybody else was doing with the feed, like being a consumer, and how the only way she could get help for fixing her system was if she actually became a consumer and pretty much went against her own views. She pretty much suffered because of that, and I'm like, that's really messed up when you really think about it. The fact that they could look at each other's feed or like look through their memories, which was really interesting. And it was also disheartening that the fact that like Violet just sent all of her memories to Titus, and Titus was pretty much just like, yeah, I'm gonna delete all of these. When I read that line, I was just like, you know, you're a jerk for doing that. Like, she is suffering and you're just going about life like it's nothing. Like, you guys are disintegrating, and it's kind of really disheartening to like read about that. The ending being the way that it was, the fact that like Titus pretty much just threw everything in her face about how, you know, we just knew each other for only a summer, which was also really weird because like I kept forgetting that this only happened not for the summer, but just like a couple months that they had known each other. And like during that time, it felt a lot longer. Like, it felt like they experienced so much through that time frame, and they did so much. And then for him to just be like, oh, like it could have just been a fling and whatever, and like you keep talking about death like you're already dead and whatnot. To be honest, I don't fully feel like Titus learned a lot by the end of it. It does feel sympathy, and he realizes, hey, you know, she was right. But it kind of took him seeing her paralyzed and kind of just being in this horrible state for him to realize, yeah, the feed is really bad for us and we're all disintegrating and dying little by little. I'd say one of the most like best moments was between him and her father, and how he was just talking about the way he just like left and all of this, and like it was just a really great detailed scene. I expected that to happen. Like, I already was kind of figuring it out. I'm like, yeah, she's not gonna make it by the end of this novel. And I'm not sad about it. I was more so disappointed in the fact the way Titus's character kind of pushed away all of this, like pushed away all the problems, and was kind of like, no, I'm going to delete her feed and I'm not going to care and I'm just going to move on. I can tell it was in spite and jealousy, not jealousy, but in spite of her, and a little bit of jealousy, because he throughout the whole entire novel he felt like he was really stupid, and he kept thinking that like, oh, I'm an idiot compared to her, and I'm jealous of her, and this and this and this. I will say that this novel is amazing. It gets a 5 out of 5 stars for me. If you're really into just really futuristic, this is really a great book, and I would highly recommend it for anybody to read or reread. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see all you guys in the next video. Bye.